Okay? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So it's already 4:20. I guess we'll start with our discussion. So for today's lecture, we'll be talking about algorithms and flowcharts. Now, before we dwell into deep sa programming, okay, uh, it makes sense that we learn more how mahulog ito nga pattern when you're going to create programs. So naatay gina-follow ana. Okay? So what is an algorithm? Now, an algorithm is a finite set of well-defined rules for the solution of a problem in a finite number of steps. Ang sabot pasabutan ng finite, okay? So yung opposite sa finite or finite, okay? It's
Infinite.
infinite. Okay. So ang finite is anang na ay definite nga sinugdanan, then na ay definite nga end. And of course, in between that start and end, there's a different set of things that are happening there. Now, it is also considered as a set of well-defined rules or procedures for solving a problem in a finite number of steps or providing an output from a specific set of input, okay, usually implemented as a computer program. Now, algorithm and flowchart is not entirely exclusive for computing and programming. Okay? So even during your enrollment process, di ba, na may gina-follow nga murag steps. Okay, na murag graphical steps in which we could also refer to that as a flowchart. Okay? So later on, we'll get to know what is the difference between an algorithm and a flowchart. Now, to make a computer do anything, you have to write a computer program, diba? So far we have been discussing this, that in order for you to effectively communicate with a computer, you need to know, so ito, you need to have a programming language of choice, then you need to know how to exactly tell the computer what to do. So to write a computer program, you have to tell the computer step by step exactly what you want it to do. So the computer then executes the program, following each step mechanically to accomplish the end goal. Now, when you are telling the computer what to do, you also get to choose how it's going to do it. Okay? That's where algorithm comes in. So, unsa imong approach, unsa imong pamaagi para ma-achieve na nga goal. So algorithm is very easy to understand, but building an algorithm for a given problem is another thing. Sabot pasabot ana. Okay. Usually, when you are presented with an algorithm, okay, it is expected that you will be able to follow that step by step. But the reverse thing, okay, let's say if you are required to build an algorithm, then it would be, let's say, it would be your job to make it simple, to make, not really simple, but to make it understandable, okay, and coherent. So, mao na ang challenge ana. So, for example, what are real world example of an algorithm? So, katong giingon kanina, nga enrollment procedure, di ba? So, during your enrollment, nagid mo starting point. Okay? Then, naapod mo expected na outcome. So, yung starting point, most probably is you go to your, let's say, sa inyong advisor, program advisor. Then, it is expected once you go with the process of enrollment, at the end, okay, you expect to be enrolled. Mao na ang output ninyo. So, in between that, how you achieve different requirements, where you went when you were required to process that step in the enrollment, we could refer, or we could consider that as a form of algorithm. Another example is recipe. Diba? Sa recipe, so may recipe, okay? Usually, ang recipe, makita na to na sa if we are going to prepare a dish. So let's say adobo mo manok. Okay? So again, so far, I think I have discussed this na it's not enough that you have the complete set of information. Okay? It's also important how you're going to use this information to arrive with an expected output. Okay? So, kana, di ba? Na steps ana dili pwede nga unahon o luto ang saba, okay? before anak. So if you want to arrive with an adobo in the end, so you need to follow the recipe for that. Though there are variation with how you want to add pila sa magbutang kag sugar or magbutang pa kag suka or ngana. Okay? So there may be variation, but as long as it is considered as an adobo in the end, then that algorithm is acceptable. And even in programming, it's not always the case that the algorithm of a certain problem would be entirely the same across all solutions. So pwede nga lahi-lahi, depende sa approach. Okay? Sometimes, this would be evident for programs that are quite complex and complicated, that have different ways of approaching the solution. But anyway, in the following computer algorithm example, okay, this is what we get to see. What would be the problem here? What would be the goal? The goal is for you to compute for the voltage given the current and resistance. Okay? So usually, in this case, it's very easy, it's very identifiable kung sa itong himuon and what information that we have. Okay? So long as you know the solution, okay, it is expected that you know the, let's say, the component for that or the given, okay, or mga variables na dapat nato i-accept. Okay? So natay mga specific words that we would like to see when you are writing an algorithm. Now, if you want, remember, we are talking to a computer, but in this point, we do not have what we call a specific programming language in mind. Kay unsa man day pulos aning algorithm. Now, algorithm is actually useful if you are trying to explain your program to other persons that are not programmers. In short, you are devoiding the technical aspect. As much as possible, you are trying to tell your program, you're trying to explain your program as simple as possible in a way that it is straightforward. Okay? So, ang common accepted ani, nga let's say, di ba, before you're going to process something, you need to have data. Okay? So, if you are receiving data, then you need to write input. Okay? So, kaning I, kaning R, okay? These are, di ba, kung sa ato apang algebraic nga mga expression or sa atong calculus, mo ni matawag nato nga mga unknowns, okay, or variables. Even variables are used in mathematics. Okay? These variables are expected to hold a value. So in this case, I would be representative as the current value. Okay? And R would represent as resistance value. So you need these two input for you to come out with the voltage. Now, once you have the complete set of inputs, in this case, duha naman, I and R, then you are going to tell what would be the process for that. Okay? So, maingon tayo og let V be equal to the product of I and R. So, mura na nato, di ba? If we're going to write that in a formula, mura siya V is equal to I as times R. But since you are stating this as plainly as possible, so ingana siya pagsulat. Okay? Then finally, once you get the value V for the voltage, then of course, you need to verify, you need to validate, and you need to inform the user that mao na yung resulta. And in order for you to do that, you need to have an output for that. So you need to output the value of V as the voltage. Okay, again, another example. Conversion from kilo to pounds. So again, what you're trying to do here is based on an input. Okay, in this case, a kilo, you want to convert it to pounds. So, of course, the first step is you need to accept a certain value for your kilo. Then it makes sense to make use of variables here. Kaya later on, ato ang mandayod ning i-convert. Okay? Duha ka approach ani, by the way. Di ba I have stated that if you want to explain your code, if you want to explain your code as plainly as possible, pwede ingani. But also, if you do not have existing code, it would also help if you get to state the algorithm, okay, first, so that you have an idea on the sequence of converting these steps into the corresponding code na dayon. Okay? So input a kilo value store to K, then process na pod, di ba? Mura na gini, input, process, output. Okay, mura gid na ang basic na task sa computer. Okay? So now we have the necessary value for our input, then we get to process that. So let pound be equal to K times 2.2. Then finally, as a form of verification, validation, and confirmation, we are going to output the pound value. Again, there's a note there. IR, VK, and pound are used as a variable that holds the data. The importance of variables is your program would be flexible in a way that it will accept any value as long as it's in the correct format for that computation. Okay? Yan na. So 3 things to consider in creating an algorithm. Again, input, process, output. Okay? So as you get to see here, from a set of data, once that undergoes a process, then it would be considered as information. Okay? Sometimes, okay, we interchange the usage of the word data and information. In some cases, in other scenarios, let's say in non-programming mga conversation, it may be acceptable. But if you're very technical for that, and if you're going to refer these terms in computing, then they're actually treated differently. Since kanang data, okay, these are facts and figures or numerical representation of an entity. Okay, then once you get to have a logical conversion or a process, diba? Once you process this data, then you get to have what we call an information. Okay, mura na let's say an example for that. Okay, the word age. Okay, then the number 19. Individually, okay, we could not really readily tell kung unsay buot pasabot ana. Okay, but karon murag bakuan na gid ninyo, ma-associate na gid ninyo nga age 19, iyang edad is 19. Kana siya nga inyong association based on those two things. Okay, that is what we call information. Okay, so kana. Anyway, that's that. So each algorithm should have these 3 elements. Okay, now algorithm should be detailed enough. So more examples, computing the area of a circle. Okay? So unsa man compute sa area of a circle? So, unsa ganito? We have input, process, output. So, first step, let pi be equal to 3.1416. Okay? It's very important that if there are constants, okay, or fixed values in your computation, you need to set a value for that. Okay? So, kana. Kay lahi ra nang ibutang ninyo nga input pi value store to input pi value store to pi. Okay? So kana, you're like accepting other values of pi, in which in this case this refers to as an important constant in computing any circle value. Okay? So dapat inyo ipakita diha. So of course, the radius could be any length, of any value. So input values to input radius value store to R. Then nanatay necessary nga information nga na data nga to ang i-process. So the actual process would be let A be equal to pi, okay, times R times R. Okay? So putting square of R instead of R times R is acceptable but not detailed enough, because putting only square may not be understood by the computer. Okay. Now, an algorithm, we could also refer to this, or we could also treat this as what we call pseudocode. If you've heard of the word pseudo, okay, P-S-E-U-D-O, okay, unsay synonymous na sa word nga not true, false, or not exactly the same. Muna siya dili parehas, okay, or not kuan. Nga na. This is treated as pseudocode kay mura ni siya og middle ground. Okay? Middle ground in a way that it would be plainly understandable by a non-programmer or non-technical person, but also it could be written in a way that uh, it would be understandable, or it could be interpreted, or translated. Okay, it could be translated. Some part of it could be translated by the program. Okay. So finally, we're going to output the value of A as the area of the circle. Okay? Na napo tayo ginatawag na conditional execution of kaning simple loop. But for now, di sana tayo i-discuss. Okay? We'll dwell on this later. So what about a flowchart? Okay? A flowchart is just a graphical representation of of the algorithm. Okay? So a flowchart is a graphical representation that illustrates the sequence of operation to be performed to get the solution of a problem. So essentially an algorithm. So it is a graphical representation of an algorithm. The flowchart is a means of visually presenting the value of data through data processing operation. These flowcharts play a vital role in the programming of a problem and are quite helpful in understanding the logic of complicated and lengthy problems. Okay? By nature, okay, human beings could readily process graphical data. Okay, or what I meant by this is we prefer to be instructed graphically, or in short, we are visual learners. Okay, mas dali na to madumduman, mas dali na to ma-digest if ipakita sa tuwa kaysa isulti sa tuwa. Okay, and if there are, let's say, images that support such representation, then much better, okay, or much readily understandable. So what are the benefits of a flowchart? Okay, a flowchart would benefit when it comes to communication. Flowcharts are a better way of communicating the logic of a program to all concerned. Okay, and also effective analysis. With the help of flowchart, problem can be analyzed in a more effective way. Proper documentation. Program flowcharts serve as a good program documentation which is needed for various purposes. What's one documentation? Documentation is just like an operational manual of your program. Okay? It tries to discuss what that part of your program will do. Okay? Ingana na ang documentation. And creating flowcharts for your programs, okay, is one way of properly documenting your code or your program in general. Then, proper debugging, diba? The more you understand what you're seeing, the more it's easier for you to debug it or to solve certain problems that may arise. So the flowchart helps in debugging process. Okay? Limitation of using a flowchart. Kung ano siya medyo apiki gamiton. Okay? When it comes to complex logic, sometimes the program logic is quite complicated. In that case, flowchart becomes complex and clumsy. Now, even though, if you've noticed, diba, napod tayo, on direct. These are quite helpful in understanding the logic of complicated and lengthy problems. And naging direct, limitation man siya. Okay? This depends entirely on how you dissect your program. Okay? It's not necessary that in your program, ibutang nimo tanan as a single flowchart. It makes sense that if it's very complicated, daghan na kayo, daghan na kay symbols, later we'll get to see the symbols. It makes sense that pwede ninyo chop-chopon in a way nga i-separate na to gamay ang kaning process. Okay? Then kaning process, ilahin na to gamay. Still they may be connected, but may separation in a way nga we get to approach piece by piece unsa ang iyang logic. Okay? So the limitation that is being referred to here is in case that you are going to create an entire flowchart for a very complex program. Okay? Modification. Now, if modification are required, the flowchart may be redrawn completely. Okay? Now again, since flowchart is expected to be a graphical representation, expect that you are going to represent that with shapes, symbols. So drawing pa ninyo na, be it manually or using a program. Later on, we'll get to use a program to create some flowchart. But modification sometimes involves murag yung durag ta kung drawing mo. Let's say giinhatagan mo instruction nga pag-drawing mo og baki. Okay? So nag-drawing mo baki. But na po the additional instruction nga baby nga baki. Okay? So if you know, lahi ra gyud ang itsura sa baki nga baby pa kay murag gyud siya butiti, butiti gitawag ana. Kaysa sa baki nga dako na kay na gyud na tiil. Okay, of kamot. Okay, so sa ending usabon ninyo og drawing. So murag gyud ingana na logic. That if there are modification, if depende sa modification, okay, posible nga mura mag-redraw gid mo. Okay? Then also reproduction. As the flowchart symbols cannot be typed, reproduction of flowchart becomes a problem. So fortunately, there are application programs that helps alleviate this problem. As I've said earlier, nakipakita nga program in which pwede mo, as long as you have a computer, you could create flowcharts. So before we dwell into flowchart, let's try converting. Okay. And so far in our program examples, frame naman to. Okay, medyo underwhelming ang mga program. Now, so itong ipa-visit sa inyo nga site online, Python. Remember, if you are already performing activity 2, okay, most likely na-encounter na ninyo ni if you visited the online interpreter. Okay, again, this is an online interpreter for Python. Tuwad na lang ni, or ahi mas prefer ninyo, dark or light?
Dark, sir.
Dark,
Dark,
sir.
sir.
Dark lang. Actually, I don't know. In my case, when I'm coding, mas comfortable ko sa itom. Okay, and I think it's only natural for your eyes to be more comfortable with a dark view when it comes to viewing text. Okay. Anyway, I digress. So let's try. Okay. So, how do you convert this, diba, into a program? Diba? Pwede nga na may program daan, then inyo ang simplify in a form of algorithm so that you get to explain. Or otherwise, wala pa may code, you have no idea on how you're going to do that. So you initially create an algorithm so that you get to imagine, but you get to identify the necessary data, the correct process, and the expected output of your program. Okay? So input I as current value. Okay? So I daw as current value. By the way, if you're going to open online Python, every time you're going to open that, naagid ni siya nga set of codes. Okay? These are just example code. These are just template. Okay, so most of the time you do not need that, so you need to erase that. Okay, so that you get to start from scratch. So going back, gusto na to makompute ang voltage. So ang I daw, okay. So I may be I may be discussing this in advance, guys. Supposedly this would be covered in your finals, first topics of finals, but since Python is very easy, it's very straightforward, I expect that you could understand this code that or this program that I'm going to create. Okay, so ang I daw, diba, these are variables. How are you going to write variables, or how are you going to start with variables in Python? Okay, of course, you need to identify a variable. Na, pwede na siyang I. So input daw. So if you want to accept a user input from in Python, so inganin na siya. Okay? the word input. Most, if you'll notice, okay, while I am typing, okay, na actually ginasuggest, okay nga na, most IDE, most interpreters, okay, especially designed for Python, will suggest, okay, para na may idea nga, kanang inyong gina-type, mura valid na siya nga syntax. Okay? So, natay ginatawag nga autocomplete ng mga features sa mga IDE. So, you may notice kay ngani. Okay? So, input, to make your program more human. Okay? Sabot ani. Okay? And bitaw medyo if you're using that program, you are like communicating with a human. You must make your program as human-like as possible. So, since the computer is asking a value of our current, then pwede po na ito na iingon. Okay? Pwede na ito na ipakita nga prompt sa tuang computer. Okay? So, input current value. Na. So, may usa ka input, R. So, input, you also notice na if that symbol is expected to come in pair, mo autocomplete ko na siya. Okay? So, if you'll notice, input, and ako check color nga coding. Diba? Nagbutang ko of open parenthesis, ihan ang gi-close diretso. Okay? This is the IDE or the Integrated Development Environment assisting you as much way as possible nga dili niyo na malimtan later. Okay, so nga na siya. So, input, sama na, resistance value. So naanatay, nanatay input, nanatay, kulang pa tag process, then an output. Okay, so if you're going to make this run, may tabo, this will not cause an error, but you would expect that this will not do anything, okay? Aside from accepting input, diba? You'll notice na siya blink diha. So kana. This is the interpreter waiting for a value that you're going to enter using keystroke in your keyboard. Okay? So let's say value sa concurrent is 4.5. 4.5. Okay? So resistance value, let's say 1.25. Of course, the program ended with essentially nothing. What I mean is, the program ended in an incomplete. Okay? An incomplete state. Okay? Kulang pa. Okay? So, unsa may formula sa atuang voltage. Okay? So, V is equal to I. Okay. Now, again, later we'll get to discuss the correct symbols for different operation in Python. But if you want to perform multiplication in Python, you are going to use asterisk for that. Okay, I times R. This I and this R, mo ni sila nga mga values or variables kay muhang gipang accepted of value ganiha. Okay. So, nanatay input, nanatay process, next is the output. Okay? So, we could write, okay, since, di ba, unsa ganitong magpagawas ta og statement, okay, we are going to use the word print. Okay? Print the value, diba, the value of the voltage is na. Okay? What pasabot ani, iyahan i-print, then, comma, V, this refers to this variable here. You'll notice na wala na ko na siya gi-include diha. Kaya kanin siya nga, if nabutang ka siya sa quotation, okay, every time you're going to make it run, unsay sulod sa ato ang quotation, maagid na iyahan isulat. But, if you're going to, let's say, ganyan na to ha. Now, every time you're going to run this, Okay, so natay error. We'll discuss that later. Okay, so this is a syntax error. Okay? Can't multiply sequence by non-int type of str. Okay, so going back. Okay, so ang problema ani is every time mag-change ang value ani, okay, dili siya mo reflect the rate. So what we're going to do is either ingalian ninyo, okay, we could use plus. There are multiple ways of integrating variables in print statements. So this is one. Pwede ingana. Okay. So let's use that. But before that, we need to solve this syntax error. Okay. So trace back on the most recent call in this file, main.py, so kanina siya nga file na ay error daw in line 4. Na. Yang giingon, there is a type error. So can't multiply sequence by non-int of type. Okay? Buot pasabot ani, okay? Later on, we'll get to discuss types, data types. Okay? Buot pasabot ani, you are trying to perform a mathematical operation between non-numeric value. Okay? So unsa day problema ani? Okay? Ang problema ani is there's an additional step if you want to only treat these variables in a numeric format. Okay, so there are additional steps. Unsa man? One thing is for you to write float, okay, ang lookout, then i-enclose nimo na siya na. Okay. Again, this might be advanced for you, but I'm just showing you, okay, that creating programs, okay, it's not that straightforward, and it requires you to practice, then correctly research. Okay? So, what would happen if ato ana i-execute ko? So, mahitabo ani, di ay, the default data type, okay, the default type of data, if you are going to use input, it's actually a string. Okay? Kanang string, parehas na sila sa words, kanang inyong address, inyong ngalan, kanang mga letters, di ba? By nature of these characters, okay, dili na nimo mahimuan, magamitan og mathematical operation. You might be saying, sir, unsa lugar na sa algebra, sir, na x plus y ganina. Okay? This X and Y, again, are treated as variables in which they will later hold values that is valid for mathematical computation. But ang Python, dili man na bright, di ba? As what we have already discussed, Python is not intelligent. Okay? Nakita niya nga, string man gyud niya ako ang pagsabot ani, if imuon nimo ning operation that you are expecting this to be a mathematical operation, di kid ako na mahimo. Okay? So dapat i-explain pa gid mo sa kuha. Okay? Dapat imuhag yung i-hanay sa kuha yung gusto ipahimo. So this would involve you in writing this statement there. Okay? Float, by the way, kanang float is kanang mga values or kanang mga numbers kanang decimal values. Okay? So it's normal that in this type of computation, nagi instances nga dili gid siya whole values. Okay? If gusto na ninyo nga whole value ra pod, ang iyahang i-accept, okay? Or yung conversion na is whole, meaning dili niya apilon ang decimal part in ang imuhang gamito na nagdari. Okay? Short for integer. Okay? So let's go back. Let's revert this to float, right? It's expected that any value of I, any value of R could be an integer or a decimal value. Okay? So now we'll get to execute this program. Okay, so walay syntax error. Syntax error, by the way, they commonly, or it's almost always the case, nga magpakita siya sa initial nga runtime or program sa to ganito. program execution. Okay? That is in the case of Python. Anyway, butang ta diri og 4.5 and 1.5. Oh, nanapod. Can only concatenate. Kanina po. Okay? Na inarte na po ang Python. Okay? This is not to discourage you, ha. Kaya murag mao lang yung perks sa Python. Nga dili siya, this is also true in any programming language. So if you imagine nga, lisod naman, ingon si sir, sayo na rin ang Python. Yes, this is easy compared to other programming languages. So if naglisod mo ani, if you're going to encounter other programming languages, medyo mas compared ani, gamay ra ni siya nga problema. Kasi nahitabo na yan eh. Okay? So, okay siya. Actually, nilahos na siya diri nga part, di ba? Unsa man niya hang line nga nag-error siya. So, file, traceback, in this file, line 6. So, nilahos na siya diri. Okay, so okay ni. By the way, kani sila nga line, kanang blanco, dili na i-appeal process. But for better readability, it makes sense nga, butangan na ito na spaces. Diha. So, the value voltage can only concatenate string. It's about possible anang concatenate, okay? Concatenation, okay, in string manipulation, it's like gluing different strings, okay? Or gluing different words. So, ang nahitabo diri is kaning plus na symbol, this is not actually used as a form of addition, but in Python, the plus symbol could also be used as string concatenation. Kanang string concatenation, mo na ang pamaagi nga idikit ang usa ka value as a string to another set of string value. A string value, again, these are type of non-numeric values in Python that are commonly used for descriptive purposes. Okay? So kani siya, this is a string value enclosed in quotation. Then gusto niyo muna idikit ni nga whatever value of this, muna idikit isumpay diha para pag print ani mabasa nato nga the value of the voltage yang isumpay kung unsay value ani. But since nag-ingon siya nga dili pwede i-concatenate ang string o ang non-string, so in this case float. Okay? Float na ni siya nga value kay kani siya nga value float, then automatically the result of that operation is a float data type. So gi-convert na pud niya ni nga or gi-treat na pud niya ni nga float. Okay? So how are you going to solve that? Yes, again, through research, through experience, you'll get to know one way of solving this is writing str. Be careful, ha? Kaya sometimes, magsapaw-sapaw ang parentheses, dili na mapares. Okay? You need to double check that. Let's try if this will work. So 4.5, 1.5. Okay, so the value of the voltage is 6.75. Now do not stop there. Okay, there are cases nga, wala syntax error. Then ning calculate shelves of ani, this is correct. Okay, again, there are different types of error. This could be a semantic error, okay, or a logic error nga 6.75 but good. So nowadays, it's very easy to validate your program or this program. Okay? Ay pwede man punta mag-research na yon o let's say sa Google. So ayan, nagita karon. Okay? Voltage calculator. Tingnan na lang. Then formula, the VIR. Then mangita tao po voltage kaya mangita tao kanino ano na lang, okay? In this case, dili kay siya ingon readily evident ang mga solution. Okay? But atong manamanhon, okay? Karon basic naman na siyang computation. Okay? Enough na nga manumanhon nato. So, unsa tong gibutang ato nga value sa I? 4.5. 4.5 I times R naman na siya. So, 4.5 times 1.5, 6.75. So, we would assume nga by manumano, na may ubay madalag manumano, especially if kasabot mo, very straightforward naman ang formula. So, we'll get to say nga, uy, sakto ato ang program. It is working as expected. So, if ato ibalik, okay, let's say nalipat mo, kami itong giingon nga magbutang ta diri og V. So, ang mahitabo ani is, say, 4.5, 1.5, so the value of voltage is V. Okay, so since wala gi-appeal nimo siya, this is actually what we call a string constant or a string literal. Okay, or constant ni siya nga value that every time you're going to make this program run, every time maabot siya ani nga line of code, yaring i-print kung unsay gibutang mo diha in between the tuwang codes. Okay? So one way, katong ganina natin str. Okay? Let's try. Okay, there's actually another way which may not require you in forcing the value of V to be converted to string. Let's try this. V, katong kama, katong gigamit. Let's try kung gaana niya. Okay, programming, even in my case, is trial and error. Okay, naginay trial and error. What the programmer na dili mo agi trial and error. Bahala kung saan naka-basic, okay, ang iyang trabahoon, na agi possibility nga ako masayop ko discuss, ang masayop ko o pakita kay para sa kanina, di ba? Wala pa na ko ni butang as part of your code, so nagka-error yun. So ano naman ta? So 4.5, 1.5. Okay. Pwede na ganun. If you'll notice, duha ka space. So pwede ra di ay, nadilit ni butang ang space dire, automatically if you're going to use comma, okay, butangan na niya next space. If you're going to make this run, 4.5, 1.5. Okay, so, nani-space automatically diyan. Even though wala diyan. The spaces are actually, okay, treated, it's not, these values are not treated as non-existent in Python. And in spaces, naging na sila associated na value. So if we're going to make this run, so 4, 5, okay, you get to see, mo reflect yun na siya. Ang spaces na kung pasabot na dili mo reflect, it's kani in between codes. Okay? So bahala, ako kayo nag-space diha. So still, or gyapon na ang iyahang behavior. Okay? Sometimes, this is an indicator nga nagsalid mong pangopya sa inyong classmate, mismo spacing, okay, inyo yung kopya. Okay, siguro okay ra, kaya naman tayo standard sa spacing, but pati mga variables, pati mga, sometimes ang ngalan, makopya. So again, I highly encourage you to do things on your own. Okay ra mangopya in a way nga, as part of the learning process, you get to learn. Okay? You get to identify kung say wala ninyo nasabtan, then later on, nasabtan na ninyo. Dili kay blatant ka kay nga pagkopya. Anyway, going back, hopefully, you get to see here, okay, ibali mo ra conversion, yung kahit tabo, sa when you are going to you are going to create a program based on an algorithm. Ano naman ta? Yan na. Okay, let's try this. Okay? Para mahasa kita. So again, input, kilo, value, store. Okay. Okay na po. By the way, pwede na siya, okay? Pwede na siyang, technically speaking, pwede ka magamit og capital letter sa variables, but there are conventions, okay, that you need, that you should follow. Conventions, these are unwritten rules in the programming community nga ilahang i-suggest ninyo i-follow. Okay? So most of the time, variables are written, okay, as much as possible. If you are treating that normally as a variable, small letters na sila. Okay? So K. So input, kilo value. Enter value for kilo. Diba? Through experience, dapat, if you're going to make use of that input na value as computation, so mo na to na siya numeric format. In this case, float. So pound is equal to K12. Okay, so clear na yun, pound is equal to K times 2.2. Then, print. Yung output naman ta, print the value in pounds. Is, of course, kamo ni bahala gusulat ani. Depende na lang na kung naging sa instruction nga kanigid ang inyong isulat or pwede ra po dayon nga as long as you could convey the answer, okay? Or you get to convey kung unsay buot pasabot ana nga program or that part sa atong program. So, pwede na ito magamit ng tamaan para dili na ito mag-convert atong string. And even, di na ito magbutag space diha, butang ang tao, pound. So, if we're going to make this run, so let's say, ang value for kilo, let's say, 60 kilos ko. Convert that to pound, so I am 132. Okay? So, later on, di ba? Later on, if you constantly practice, sometimes kaning magkatong mga error nga kato nalimtan nato ning float or kaning i-desire nato ng ani, okay, later on murag mamasang memory na ninyo na okay dapat gid na yung ani kay para correct yung format or dapat na gid siya ay kaman na lang nato para dili na ko i-imuan og kanang dili na ko convert to string balik so ingana. Okay? So going back to our flowchart topic. So natin ginatawag na flowchart symbol. Okay? Remember, di ba? An algorithm daw is a finite set of instructions. So, in order for you to specifically tell that that is the starting point of your flowchart, then you're going to use this terminator. Okay? So terminator refers to the start or end of the program. Ang pinaka-common na dinato na makita na is kaning symbol when the word start or stop if it's at the start of the flowchart. If it's the end of the flowchart, then begin and end. Kanara. Okay? Data. So in this case, data or input or output operation is direct. Okay? So kanina, ang input o output operation daw is represented by this symbol. Process, these are computational step for a change of value rectangle. Then a flow line, okay? Take note, nana sila yung mga arrowhead. Okay, this refers to the flow of data and operation. Okay, or ang general flow para makabalogit mo kung asa padulong. Decision, okay? A decision is commonly used in conditional execution or conditional statements. So decision, making decisions and branching, it's a two-way decision process. Connector, this is commonly used if dako na kayang flowchart nga atong chap-chapon, so we could use this. Or if you're going to have connector, magyapon yung page of connector, but this refers to the flow of data and operation. I think this is used commonly if lahi na po the page, okay? But definitely, not definitely, but what we're going to use most of the time is kani sila lima. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So the usual direction or guidelines in flow charting. The usual direction of the flow of procedure or system is from left to right, top to bottom. But pasabot ani, if you want to make use of the vertical space of your drawing pad, so dapat ang order ana is top to bottom. You want to utilize the horizontal space as much as possible, space warrants, that should be left to right. Mura na bitaw magbasa ta. Di ba kung magbasa ta, left to right, dayon, if you're going to proceed to the next line, of course, paubos ato ang approach na. So only one flow line should enter a decision symbol, but only two flow lines should leave the decision symbol. So later on, we'll get to discuss that. So only one flow line is used in conjunction with terminal symbol. Kana. Murag kung ang usa lang ka line ang mugikan, ug usa lang ka line ang mo end sa tuwang terminal. So if the flowchart becomes complex, it's better to use connector symbols. So matong game kanina. To reduce the number of flow lines. Avoid the intersection of flow lines if you want to make it more effective and better way of communication. Kaya ito mag-cross-cross na ang linya. Okay? Sometimes it's unavoidable, but as much as possible, i-avoid na siya. To ensure that the flowchart has a logical start and finish. If we're going to create an equivalent flowchart sa atong gihimong algorithm kanina, so ingani ra ka simple. Ang nadugang ra gid ani actually is aside from the symbol is kaning word na start ug stop. Okay? So start oval. So an arrowhead pointing down signifying that that is the next step. So input I. So since input man siya, so magamit ta ani so yun siya nga shape. Forgot what shape this is. I think it's parallelogram. Okay, anyway, you are going to use that shape. Then, pag umana itong input I, input po R. So, since input man siya, inana. Then, a process, V is equals to I times R. Then, output man, so, kaning nga symbol, output V, then since we are at the end of our program, or atong flowchart, so, kana dayon, stop. You'll notice also nga, ang ginagbutang dire, it's shortened words and as close as possible sa programming language na imong ginagamit. Okay? So, nga na. Though you might research, if you're going to research other sources for this, may uban niya lahi-lahi o pagsulat. But, nevertheless, a flowchart will try and make it as easily understandable as possible ang flow of execution. But to make it formal, kanilang atong basihan nga pamaagi kaning mga symbol, okay, sa ato ang paghinog flowchart, sa ato ang klase, o sa ato ang course. So another flowchart sa ato ang sa tawag sa pag-convert sa kilos to pound. Okay? Di ba? More or less, maumao ra gyud siya sa tong Python nga code in contrast aning word nga output kay print man. Even some sources, you might see that ang ginabutang diri is print. Okay? So output or print, I'll accept that. So mao ni ang decision making. Okay? So for now, dili sa nato himuon ang program equivalent aning decision making. Okay? So, the reason that I haven't discussed this earlier, kay it's much understandable na makita na nato ang flowchart na yun. Okay? So, taking the previous, determining whether the number is odd or even. Okay? Pero sa naman nato maingon nga ang number is odd or even. Diba? A number is even if you're going to divide that by 2, walay remainder. So kung sa Binisaya pa, dili mabungkig. Okay? So example, the number 4. If you're going to divide that by 2, ang output ana is a whole number. Meaning, wala siya fractional part. So ang output ana, 4 divided by 2 is 2, remainder 0. So let's say an example, 7. Now if you're going to divide 7 by 2, now there is a fractional part. Pila may resulta na. So natay 3.5. Okay, kanang 0.5, again, we get to refer that as a fractional part or the remainder part, okay, of the result. So kung naagani na siya a remainder part, a fractional part, automatically odd na siya. Now, what is the algorithm for that? So morning. Of course, we need to accept a number for a number that we are going to process. So input a number, call it A. Okay? It's actually kaning niyo ang ipangbutang diri. Pwede ra bisag unsa as long as it's logical, as long as it makes sense, and as long as you are consistent. Kanang A nga imong pasabot diha, once you're going to write A here, maura ni sila nga butanga. Okay? So, input number A, divide A by 2. Now, mauni, kaning number 3, mauni ang decision nga part or ang conditional execution nga part. So, if the remainder is non-zero, then output, the number is odd. Otherwise, output, the number is even. So, nga na ra. This is a very basic conditional execution. A very common example when we first talk about conditional statement in any programming. Okay, so how are you going to convert that into a flowchart? So as usual, natay start. So if not, mag-check kung points based ani, sure na gid nga naamoy points ani. So start or stop. So start. Arrow input A. So kani nga shape, then the word input. So dapat sulatan gid ninyo kay kung A ra inyo ibutang diha, remember this shape will also refer to output. Okay? Kana. Sunod, natay value. Kaning value, this is actually the remainder part that we're going to determine, di ba? Ang ato ara tan-awon aning isang remainder. Regardless of what the value of A is, we are going to check the remainder. Now, if dili siya 0, then it's even. If dili siya 0, it's odd. If 0 siya, even. So kana naman yun. So, it makes sense that we get to store a value that would get the remainder. Now, in programming, we have an operator called the modulus operator. The modulus operator is actually an operator that instead of getting the quotient of an operation, it gets the remainder. Okay, so kanagan sa gito yung timanan, ang modulus, it would get the remainder part of the operation. And remainders, this only occurs when you are going to perform division. Okay? So a modulus is used to get the remainder portion or the remainder value of a division operation. Okay? So I hope nakuha ninyo na. So diri na dayon ang decision making, kaning number 3. So nagbutang ta og word using this symbol na diamond, okay? The word if. If val, this is a common symbol of inequality. Okay? If val is not equal to 0, so pwede na po ibutang ninyo diri is not equal or katong exclamation equal. So pwede ra. Okay? But you get to see that if ang value ani, if value is 0, so if it's true, if it's not, if it's not 0, if it's true, meaning na sa remainder part, then we're going to output odd. Otherwise, if it's false, meaning ang value sa val is 0, okay, let's say na-violate ni siya nga rule, then false na siya, output even. Then, we're going to merge these branches to a single point nga stop. Dayon. Okay, so nakuha ba? So actually, it's very easy. It's quite easy and readily understandable. Ang loop, dili lang sa kami i-discuss kanina lang sa. Okay? Dili lang nako iyan ang discussion sa flowchart, sa kaning conditional execution. Okay? Assignment, dito na ako nihatag sa inyo ha. Okay? Now, how are you going to, diba? Pwede naman i-drawing nyo, actually. Pwede rin ninyo ni paningkamutan o drawing sa paint or sa paint. Pwede rin, basic naman. But what I suggest you doing or you using is kaning atong ginagamit na ko ni Daya Portable. Okay? Just search on Daya Portable sa internet on your computer. Then once you get to click on the first result, okay, there is actually a program called Daya and it's a portable format. So you download that na. Okay. Hopefully it will download. Okay, so download siya. So we're going to open up this file. It will prompt you to install this application. So next lang ta. Yan na. So run Dia Portable. So this is actually a diagramming tool designed to create various kinds of diagrams. Okay. So of course, flowcharting is a very common way of drawing diagrams. There is a very common diagram. Naana diri by default flowchart pa din na siya. So naana diri ang atuang naana diri ang atuang terminal, naana diri ang atuang nabatay process. So naana diri itong process. Okay? Naana diri ang atuang operation. I think we could use this. Kana. Then ang atuang decision. Oops. Then, I think kana raman itong magamit. Of course, ang lines. So, be sure nga sa dire, kaning namoy nakita dire nga tulo ka buttons, dire nga part is nasa arrow. So, if you're going to hover that, arrow style at the end of the new lines, click to pick an arrow. Okay, so, that is by default. So, if you're going to create, okay, ito na lang natong demonstrate ang pag-create atong ang example. Kani, ito ang ganito. Oops. Delete. So, kana. Automatically mag-suggest na po na siya o start o pa-type. So, the word start, bibili niya pagamyan. So expect nga sa inyong ang upcoming laboratory after laboratory 2, ingani ato ang set of activities. But kani ako lang i-demonstrate sa inyo daan. So ang line kani. So kana. So you'll notice even though diri sa ato ang interface wala siya arrowhead, but since i-specify ninyo na nga diri nga part na arrowhead, so nanay arrowhead sa tumoy. Then man ni kani. Be sure to select input. Okay. Pwede nga dili sa ninyo butangan og kuan, dili sa ninyo nimuag niya. Okay, later on I'll demonstrate the importance of properly connecting this. So pound process na siya. So pound is equal to K times 2.2. And output, pound. So, kana nga symbol, output, pound. Then, stop. Nagamutan po din yung magtungod-tungod na sila. Para dinikita ko kay space. Na. So, ang arrow na yun. So, it's important nga. Oops. Magkulang arrow, dili ka ayo klaro. Okay, let's zoom this out or zoom this in. Naana siya murag blue nga cross. Hopefully sa ato ang laboratory ako gini ma-demonstrate og ayo, but for the sake nga ako anong ipakita, diha ninyo ituplok og sugod, then dapat maka-end mo sa blue pod nga cross. Okay. So kung namarka kayo nagpula, meaning na na-link na siya. Okay, you'll notice nga di na siya, maraming nitakot yun na siya diha. Then let's, oops, green na. So, ni-detach na siya. So, dire. So, actually, dili na kayo ko concerned anang, oops, dili kayo concerned anang aesthetic as long as sakto inyong gihimo nga diagram. So, I will accept that. Na. Pwede pang tungod na lang ninyo. Baka matungod pa yun, but if dili, so, hindi na inani. So, nga na nakasayon using this tool. But, of course, if you are going to require you to write that down, it's very important that you readily identify the correct set of symbols. Okay? So, actually, kana lang ang ako ang discussion sa flowchart, algorithm and flowchart. Again, the importance of this is either sa inyong case, it would be most of the time you trying to brainstorm a possible algorithm for an unknown for a given solution for a given problem. Okay? So nga na. So para itong kanina bitaw nga kanina lang. Let's create another scenario in which I'm going to require you to create an algorithm, then create the corresponding flowchart. Okay. Let's say I would like you to create to write an algorithm to solve the area of a square. Okay. So ito ang isulat. Notepad na lang. Okay. So problem is create an algorithm, a program na lang para medyo flexible siya. Create a program that would compute the area of a square. Problem. So, ang algorithm na. Taman, it's important that manamberan yun ninyo ang inyong algorithm. So, though we didn't see its importance, we could not see its importance now, but actually if we get to discuss loops, looping statement, magmatter ang numbers ani sa algorithm. But anyway, first step, unsa man? Input S as side value. Kung may bahalaan na og word, as long as maoy nyo ipasabot, pwede po input side value S. Na, ilagay pa na. Next. Actually, kanara itong kinahanglan, di ba? So, we could write let area or let A be let. I want to be consistent lang. Okay, let A be equal to pwede na rin S the product equal to the product. Let's make this word doc. So equal to the product of S and S. Pwede rin is equal to S asterisk S. Diba? Kaya squared naman na siya. Pwede ganin is equal to the square of S. Pwede rin na siya po. Okay, again, as long as you get to relate the same logic. Okay, the same thing. So, since we are going to create a program for this, so to make this simple, equal to S times s. Ano lang, pwede na po na siya. And again, we should be consistent since dako man nga s atong gi-refer sa atong variable, dako po na nga s. Even though sa program, pwede na siya malahi. But for consistency's sake, sa atong algorithm, ingana. It also makes sense na dako po when you're writing algorithm so that na pwede mailhan na variable na siya kay mas dako. Kaya kung butang ka nag-k diha, chances are mo malipat ta. Okay? And output value of A as the area. Anak lang, diba? Simple na kayo. Sa natin algorithm, how we're going to create this flowchart? So yun ra. So alam ng lahi ang gamay. So di na malangan. So nagyud ang start ng word, then kaning arrow, then input instead of K, oops. Tama ni pag-edit. Medyo kalimot ako gamit ani. Edit. Eh, magsulat at tadaan. Oops. Flowchart properties. Draw background. Wala mo. Mag-type to. Ano? Kaniday. Okay. So you need to press this kaning tool. Kana para ma-edit na to. So input ito S, then kani A siya ma-highlight. A is equal to S times S. So output output A. Tama ba? Okay, so kana. Actually, it's very straightforward. Okay? So, importante lang yun ani is makuha ninyo ang algorithm, ma-identify ninyo ang correct symbols, and you get to, of course, that I start, I stop. You get to draw that as correctly as space-saving as possible. Ayun po din yung kanagtatag kayo mga okay, kay this is check ano. Okay, so kana lang, I will be ending our discussion. Ay, kaysa, wala pa na po ni nahimo nga program. Okay, so let's try creating this as a program. So ang common magdaaning nga kuan, ang common aning nga flow of completing this problem is, okay, you get to create an algorithm, you get to create a flowchart, then you get to create the source code or the script. So, ato ta, yari sa to ang yari. Niraday na siya. S value. S is equal to input, enter, S value. And it makes sense that that would be flow. E pwede nga ang length sa or ang length side sa square is bungkig. Okay? And let A be equal. So A is equal to S times S. Then, oops, dako ka. Dako. Then print the area is comma A. To make this run, let's say 4. So area of 4 is 16. Okay, if you're going to verify if maubagid na, pwede put mo check. If it is allowed, na mag-check mo sa kuan. Area of square. Okay. A squared ganyan yun, but A squared and S times S is essentially the same. So if you're going to write here 4, is expected na 16. So, manayong pasabot ng dalik na kaayo, ipang-verify ang mga formula karon kung say expected na output due to this Google nga siya marap automatic nga calculator. Okay? So that would be all for our discussion today. Now, do you have any question? Okay, any question with regards to today's topic? Murag sayon naman, di ba?
Ano, sir?
So, ang kanila, um, sa taong midterm, okay, ako na lang i-discuss na rin. For our midterm, the average for our midterm would be atong discussion na to. Actually, discussion taman karon. Okay? Discussion taman karon. Then, I'm still thinking if the type of exam, but definitely, ang importante yan is may bawaan ninyong coverage. So, ang coverage is katong history of programming, commonly used programming languages, chapter 1, why should you write programs, then kanin, flowchart and algorithm. Okay, so I still don't know the schedule of your midterm exam, but definitely next week we'll get to have that. And remember also, this Friday na amoy quiz 1. I think it's quiz 1 and 2. Okay, so that is expected to be taken online. And I think I have posted an announcement there. So this is just a gentle reminder. Okay, so other questions or concerns with regards to this topic and to the midterms or in our upcoming quiz? Now you could raise your hand if you want. So if there is none, then I think that would be all for today. Amping mo kay Saba, I think you've heard of the news nga kay nakilatan. So ayaw na ng kumpiyansa dlaan o gawas if dili gid kinahanglan. So wag gid gituyo nga magklase ta para dili makilatan sa gawas. Okay. So anyway, I will be ending our discussion now. So this is actually recorded. So later on, I'll get to post a recording of this. So yan na. That would be all. If there are no more questions, wala na. So class dismiss.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Love you, sir.
Thank you,
Goodbye,
sir.
sir.
Apa, sir? Picture, sir.